Hey guys, this is Stacy Rossetti, and I'm back with another totally amazing woman, a real estate investor. She's located in the Florida area. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Kari.
Hey y'all, my name is Kari and I am from Florida, and this is where we primarily operate our real estate investing business. And I've been doing this now for about 8 years. Actually, I was like 5 months pregnant when I got into real estate investing. So I'm always like looking at how old were my kids when I first started, and when did I do my first flip? How old was he then? And so I've always done this as being a mom, wanted to do it as a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to replace my income as a physical therapy. I was in the corporate world and just wanted something different for my life when I started, when things change when you grow your family and you start having kids. And so that's really what I got into it for, is just to replace my income. And when I replaced my income in 6 months, working a fourth of the hours I was working as a physical therapist for a full year, I did it in 6 months, a fourth of the hours with my baby on my side. I was like, dang, this is, I could do this. And so I built it into a business. I didn't stop just at the physical therapy salary cap. We built it into a business, and that's what we're doing today.
Well, I love that you're a mom and you're a real estate investor as well too. Talk about that. How does your schedule look now that you're a real estate investor and a mom?
Well, year 2020 threw me for a loop because I had always envisioned homeschooling my kids, but we never made that jump because they're younger. We have a 17-year-old who's in high school, and he loves going to high school. But then we have a 6 and an 8-year-old. So my 6-year-old just started kindergarten this year. And so they had always been in preschool. And I had always had this envision of doing homeschool. And that's why one of the reasons why I got into real estate investing was to have the flexibility. And I had a lot of flexibility in my schedule over these last 8 years. But when COVID hit and I was forced to homeschool, what I found out was that I did not enjoy homeschooling my children. I liked the idea and the concept of it, but I realized that my patience level was not fit to become a teacher, that I was a better mom, not a great teacher. And so I really started thinking, okay, how can I make this work? Because I love having them at home. I love having the flexibility to go take off for a week and go skiing when they would normally be in school. I liked that I didn't have those time constraints. So I called up my brother, who was in Pennsylvania, and he's a full-time kindergarten teacher for the last 20 years at the same school. And I said, hey, what do you think about coming down to Florida and homeschooling our kids? And I'll hire you to be our teacher, because I love having them at home, but I do not love being the teacher. Mm-hmm. So he came down here in August, and he's been homeschooling our kids in the, I work at home. My kids are homeschooled at home by him. We all live, happily, sometimes not in the house, but I love it. And so that's how, this is what I love about real estate investing, just having that flexibility, having the resources to be able to afford something like that. And just, I don't know, real estate investing has made me a more creative person, a more patient person, as have my kids. They've also, but you just get creative and you say, okay, if I can't do it this way, how can I do it a different way? Because I love aspects of it, some of it, and I don't like aspects of other of it. So how can I rearrange the situation? And I'm always looking at different opportunities that I can put together.
I love that so much. And you're bringing up creativity now. I know you do a lot of creative deal structure, even on the real estate investing side. So go ahead and talk a little bit about that. What kind of deals you work on?
Yeah, so we do all kinds of creative things with our deals. I'm very intentional when I market. So if I want to do subject to transactions, I'm obviously not going to be marketing to free and clear properties. I'm going to be marketing to foreclosures or for little equity. Or if I want fixer uppers, I'm going to go driving for dollars, or I'm looking for landlords who are going through evictions or code enforcement. I'm always very intentional. Okay, if I'm going to market and this is what I want to start doing, I want to start doing owner financing. Well, who can I market to? Mm-hmm. But then when the deals come, you never know what the situation is going to be, right? And that's where we get creative. And it's really about digging deep into the seller's situation to see what they need. And sometimes what they need is not what we assume they need. And it's really about trying to dig into their financial situation, their personal situation, and then taking all these little puzzle pieces that they're giving us and putting it into a puzzle where it fits, right? All the pieces fit, and it's a beautiful masterpiece for both myself and for them. And so we do we do owner financing. We use other people's cash. Sometimes we're combining subject to and owner financing and other people's cash. because my goal always is to never rely on banks, cash, my cash, or credit. Because if you don't have to rely on banks, cash, or credit, the sky is the limit on how many real estate transactions you can do. But if you're going to rely on banks, you can only do so many loans until you're capped. If you're relying on your cash, there's only so many things you can do until the cash runs out. And if you're relying on your credit, same thing with banks, there's a limit to how many things can go onto your credit. And so this is where we get, this is where we get creative, right? Because owner financing subject to, this is where we don't have to rely on banks and our credit. And this is where you can be limitless. Because I don't like to put limits on my life. I think a lot of women don't like limits in their life and restrictions in their life. And banks and your cash and your credit are going to put restrictions on what you can do in real estate. Mm-hmm. So that's where creative financing comes into play. And I love creative financing because you build relationships with sellers. You get creative, you think outside of the box. We've solved a lot of things for sellers by thinking outside of the box, and they were so appreciative for it. But then also we're getting into these deals where sometimes we have absolutely none of our cash into it. And so our return on investment is infinite, which is amazing, right?
I love that. Yeah. So coming up in the next year, with everything that's happening with the market and everything, do you think that creative deal structuring is going to be like more of a necessity, or what are you thinking with what kind of deals do you see are going to be happening over the next year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no one knows what's going to happen with the market, right? No one has a crystal ball. No one knew for sure what was going to happen in the market in 2008. I think some people had an inclination, but no one knew, how bad it was going to be. And I think it's the same thing with COVID right now. When this first happened, when the news came out about coronavirus back in March and April, and then all of a sudden the stock market was crashing, right? All of us who are in real estate were like, well, what about us? What's going to happen with real estate, right? And so I became very conservative. I said, okay, maybe right now this year is not the best time to buy during these couple of months. I want to see what's going to happen in the real estate market. Unless I can buy on creative financing terms where I'm not having to take out loans, where I'm committed to pay them off within 12 months and they've got these high interest rates. If I can do some kind of creative deal structuring and the market collapses, well, now I'm in a relationship with a seller, not a bank. Because when things go haywire, you can't go to the bank many times. It's very, very rarely you can go to a bank and negotiate with a bank and say, hey, we didn't know this was going to happen. Can we just modify the loan? Can we just tweak this? Can we just not pay our mortgage for a little while, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you've got modifications, but when you're dealing with a seller, a previous seller where you did creative deal structuring, well, now you can go to them and say, hey, we've got a problem here. Can we work on something? Can we tweak the structuring? Can we work together on this? Because I don't want you to lose money. I don't want to lose money. This event happened. Let's work together. And this is where relationship building comes into play too. And so for me, I said, well, I'm not gonna go into these major renovations. We've done so many fix and flips that were major rehabs. And I said, I'm not focusing on major rehabs right now. I'm going to do the lipstick jobs, paint and carpet, just for the next couple months to see what's happening with the market. And when I buy those houses, I'm going to do it with creative financing structure or bringing equity partners in where I tell them ahead of time, hey, if things change, here's plan B and here's plan C. Are you comfortable with that? Mm-hmm. Because if I can't pay off this loan with you, we need to have plan B and plan C. So I kind of set the expectations up with my equity partners and my private lenders to say, are you comfortable going into this for the long run in case the market changes? Again, you can't do that with a bank. You can't say, hey, Mr. Wells Fargo, are you comfortable with plan B and C if the market crashes? They're going to say, take the loan or leave it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not talking about B and C here with you. You want the loan or not?
Exactly. No, I agree. So tell me tell me the last couple of deals that you've been working on. I know you said you've done some like subject to and maybe some rehab and stuff. What are the last couple of deals?
Yeah, so we actually did 2 flips back to back just recently, and it was interesting. So the first deal came from our website. It was a probate situation. She had inherited the house. It was in an area, I think she lived out of state, so she just didn't want the house. It was her parents' home, so it was outdated. She wanted an all cash offer, and whenever I get a probate, I'm always thinking they're not usually wanting to do any kind of creative financing structuring. So probate is just one of those channels where I know they just want to cash out because they just want to move on from that chapter of their life. So when it comes to probate, there's been very few instances where we've been able to do creative financing with them. And I just know that going in.
Cool.
So she wanted a cash offer. So I went to one of our private lenders and I said, hey, this is what we need to acquire it and to flip it. So we got it at such a low price that I didn't have to have any money into it. He was willing to fund the acquisition, fund the repairs, fund the closing costs, even the holding costs. I didn't have that because we structured the loan so that the interest payments were on the back end of the loan. So he got paid at the back end when we sold the house. So I didn't even have any mortgage payments while we flipped this house.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a light renovation, not a lot of demo. And I said, he gave it to us at 8%, no points, because this is someone who we've worked with many times in the past. But I said, listen, if some reason something happens with the market, are you comfortable staying in this deal for the next 3 to 5 years if we have to turn it into a rental? Because I've done the numbers and a rental works. Like I know how much I can rent this for. I know how much the mortgage payments are. So if the market corrects or something happens, could we modify this loan so that we're in it for 3 to 5 years and we can turn this into like an amortized schedule instead of interest only payments? He goes, yes, I'm totally fine with that. I'm comfortable with what you're doing. So I already had plan B and C covered when I bought this house.
I love that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you have to, because this is where investors get in trouble is they're like, this market is going to keep going up forever. Everything I touch is going to turn to gold. I'm never going to get into any problems. And we've never had any major problems with our deals, but I'm not going to say that that's always going to be the case. And when things like this happen in the world where they're beyond your control, well, I want to set the expectation up with the people that I'm working with saying, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to flip this property. Here's my plan B and C. Are you on board or not? I want to make sure you're comfortable going into this deal with all these plans in place. And I think that makes the people who we're working with comfortable too.
Yeah. And I'm sure the lenders love that as well too, because essentially they know that they see that you're thinking about what's happening, what's may or may not happen in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
So we flipped the house, no problem, in and out. We made our profit. It was a, quick $25,000 profit. Those funds went back to him. Well, in that deal, I also brought a partner in. This was a house that was really far away from me. I didn't feel like running the renovation. So I actually brought my partner in and I said, hey, she even negotiated the deal. It came from my website, but I'd never talked to the seller. So she negotiated the whole deal. She said, I'll run the whole renovation if you want to go in 50-50. So what I did was the lead came to my website. I negotiated the private financing for it. And then she did everything else. She renovated it. She sold it. And so we split the profit. I had no time into it except for talking to the private lender. It was maybe half an hour of my time and I made $13,500.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah. So we had flipped the property and I immediately got this next call. Someone brought me a lead and they said, hey, I don't know what to do with this. They're transferring, the sellers are transferring, job transfer, and they need to sell the house in like 28 days. So we went to the house and very nice house, didn't need a lot of work, paint, flooring, a couple of repairs. Their need was that they had to get going to the next state and they were using the proceeds of the sale of their home to put down as a rent to own where they were going. Mm-hmm. But this is, more expensive. So they wanted $230,000 and the house was worth $300,000. And this was like this was August. So we still weren't sure what was going on with the market. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, here's how we can structure it. They had an underlying mortgage of $146,000. And they were into this mortgage. It was a 30-year mortgage, but they were on year 16. So they had paid almost all of the interest, right?
Oh, yes.
And these mortgage payments were almost all principal. I think $500 of this mortgage payment was interest. The rest was principal, taxes, and insurance. And we were going to get that tax and insurance money back because it was just sitting in escrow. So I said, here's how we can structure it. You're going to leave that mortgage in your place, in your name. We're going to acquire this property subject to. Now, I didn't use those words with the sellers, but I'm just saying it here on this video so you guys know how we transacted this. I said the mortgage is going to stay in your name. Ownership is going to transfer over to us. We're going to give you your cash for your equity at closing. After they had paid a couple of liens off on the property, they had about $68,000 of equity. I brought my equity partner in. She had some funds in an IRA, and we had literally just done a deal together. Those funds hadn't yet gone back to her IRA. And I was like, hey, you want to just roll those funds into the next deal? Because we need $68,000 of cash to get this done. And she said, sure. So she funded the deal with the cash that was needed.
So we didn't have. She became the second.
She didn't do a second. She actually just became owner, part owner.
Oh, she became part owner. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
So we put the property into a land trust, and she had a percentage beneficial interest in that trust.
Mm-hmm.
That's
okay.
how we structured it.
That's cool.
And so she, $146,000 we didn't have to raise. And that's at 4% interest fixed on an amortized schedule that's 16 years in.
Mm-hmm.
So that money costs us like nothing. Then she brought her money in, which costs us nothing. Yeah. And then we flipped it real quick. And the reason why I set this up was because I said, I don't know if I want to take, if I do a $220,000 loan from someone, plus the $15,000 to $20,000 that we had to put in it. And I was doing the math and I said, if things go haywire, after I pay the mortgage and the HOA fee, because this was in a gated community on a golf course, the taxes and the insurance, I'm going to be negative upside down if I have to rent this thing, if I can't flip it. So I said, that option's out. I'm not going to use my cash, and I'm not going to use someone else's cash to fund this whole thing. So what else can I do? How else can I set this up? And I said, there's a mortgage in place already. Why don't we just leverage that mortgage that's already in place? That's $146,000 that's already there. We don't have to raise it. Mm-hmm. And then I could just bring my equity partner in, had the same conversation with her. I said, if things go haywire, you've got, 90,000 into it, because that was the equity plus the renovation. I said, are you comfortable leaving that money in here if we have to rent this for the next 3 to 5 years? And she said, yeah, absolutely. We could do that. Now we did tell the sellers that we would pay off that underlying loan within a year. But I knew at $146,000, when the house is worth $300,000, what are the chances of the market going down that far? Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, risk reward, right? If things go crazy and we have to pay off that mortgage, if we can't flip this house, well, we can certainly refinance it. My equity partner can keep her funds in. So I'm always thinking, when I go into these deals, no matter what the market is doing, I've already got plan B and plan C behind my plan A in case something goes wrong. There's a renovation surprise, there's a delay, the market changes. Like, I'm always thinking ahead and making sure that I set this up so that the chances of me failing are like 1%, right?
Yes, I love that. I love that. I mean, you're thinking everything through, which is exactly what you should be doing. Right. Yeah. Especially on these creative deal structures, Now, when you say you took the house subject to, just out of curiosity, is that not really a wrap?
No, it wasn't a wrap. What it was the mortgage stayed in the seller's name. Mm-hmm. The ownership transfers to us.
Oh, so you just, okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay. I was thinking that, so the person that lent you the money was an equity partner, essentially.
It's an equity partner. So the way that we put all of our properties into land trusts, for many reasons. And I always recommend, if you do a subject to transaction, that you are using a land trust to put this house into. But there's also a lot of benefits when you're going to joint venture with people. So because it was in the land trust, she just had a beneficial interest in this trust. We had a beneficiaries agreement, which mm-hmm. is the agreement between her and I that says, hey, you're going to fund it. We're going to split it. These are my responsibilities. These are your responsibilities. If I default on my responsibilities, here's what happens. If you default on your responsibilities, here's what happens. Mm-hmm. So it's called the beneficiaries agreement, and that's just a paperwork that you can put together within the trust.
And essentially they're just bringing the money in for the rehab is what it is.
She brought the money in for the equity, because we did have to give the sellers their equity at closing. So that was $68,000 to the sellers, and then she funded the renovation. But she also managed the sale too. So I had no involvement in the sale of that property. She's a realtor, so she put it up there on the as a flat fee listing, but she managed the communication with all the realtors. We did have 2 buyers. This is very strange. It doesn't happen very often, but we had 2 buyers fall through before we ended up selling it to a cash buyer at full price. Doesn't happen very often. It was just kind of weird circumstances why it happened that way.
Yeah, you like never know you never know when your deal's
So
actually
weird.
gonna close.
The first buyer was a VA buyer. Their appraiser came in 25,000 less, and we were like, no way, we're not selling it for that. Second buyer got a job transfer. He canceled, forfeited his escrow deposit. Then we got a cash buyer, full price. So from the time we listed it to the time we sold it, it was still only 45 days, even with 3 buyers, because we only had like 1 to 5 days on market between each buyer.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I love that. So you're definitely thinking outside the box. And that's what I said, these deals you can totally get done. You just have to educate yourself on like how to do these types of deals. Right? That's really it. It's just got to educate. And then it's experience. I think a lot of experience. You just got to like talk to other people and say like, okay, here's my deal. How can I really structure this?
Right. It's a skill set, but it's also, you got to get really good with communicating, because you're communicating to a lot of parties. If you think about that one deal we did, I had to communicate this deal to the sellers and make them comfortable moving forward with us. A lot of people wouldn't know how to communicate this kind of a transaction to them. So I had to tell them about the transaction, how they're protected, why we're doing it this way, how they're going to benefit, what's in it for them, right? It's always what's in it for them, not what's in it for me. So you've got to communicate it to the sellers. Then I had to go to my equity partner, communicate to her what we were doing here. So it's a lot of, you've got to get really good at communicating and presenting. And now to me, it's like, it's the same language over and over again. I'm handling the same objections. In fact, I'm answering a lot of questions before they're even asked, because I know if at the end of the day, they're like, well, we need to think about it, that means I haven't answered some of their questions. There's either confusion, or they're not quite getting it, or they really, like, at the end of it, I want them to be like, yes, this sounds good.
Exactly, right, because it is a good deal.
And for them,
if they actually do it, it would be a good deal.
It was a good deal. And for them, so they wanted to make sure this sale went through, because they had a deposit on the line. They had this house that they were going to do rent to own. They were like, how do we know you're going to follow through? And I said, here's what we can do. And this is where it's really key for listening. I knew what their motivation was. Their motivation was, we have to close on this date. I said, I'm going to do something even better for you. We can close as soon as the lien search comes back. I don't need 28 days to close, but I know you're not leaving for 28 days. So what we can do is we can actually close 5 days before you're going to leave. You stay in the house. Now you're comfortable because you've closed. You've got the cash in hand. You've got 5 days to pack. We're going to hold back $5,000 in escrow with the title company until you leave. And then once you leave and we do the final walkthrough, that $5,000 will be released. And they were like, oh my gosh, that would make us feel so much more comfortable knowing that we've closed, we're good, and now we can have the next 5 days to pack and move on. And that's how we structured it.
I mean, I think it's just creative deal structuring is really just listening to what their needs are and trying to solve that problem. Yeah. I love that. Awesome.
Solve the problem, and then always having plan A, B, C to fall back on in case something goes wrong, because in this business, there's always going to be something. You're never going to make it out of this business thinking, oh, nothing's ever going to go wrong.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. People need to realize that this is a risky business, but it's also fun at the same time.
And it doesn't.
So tell me,
set it up the right way, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So tell me, just real fast while we button everything up, can you give, like, I know you do a lot of help and you want to be doing some coaching and stuff. Can you give some good tips for newbies that want to get started, or, something like, what should they be watching out for maybe in the coming months or something like this?
I think the biggest thing for newbies, and this comes from my own experience and just seeing this, is a lot of new people have a lack of focus. They don't know where to start. They don't know what marketing channel to start with. They don't know who to market to. They don't know what kind of strategies they should be focused on. And when you're not focused and you're trying to learn everything, you become a master of nothing. And that's exactly what happened when I first started out. It took me over a year to do my first deal. And I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so for me, my one piece of advice is to get super clear on what it is you are trying to accomplish. Are you trying to replace your income as a physical therapist and you want to do it in 6 months? Because that was my goal. And if your goal is similar, where you want to replace your income, well, you might not be focused on long-term wealth building right now. You might be focused on wholesaling and fix and flipping. And if that's the case, then who should you be marketing to? I'm not probably going to be marketing to high equity properties, because that's not telling me anything that it needs work. I'm going to be super intentional. I'm going to go out and find properties that need work. I'm going to contact homeowners where I think that work is going to be needed, like homeowners who are going through evictions, code enforcement, liens, right? So I'm very intentional. Here's my goal. What can get me to that goal? Who do I need to market to get me to that goal? And what am I going to use to market to? And I'm always looking at time and money. How much time do I have? How much money do I have to spend? Because if you have no money to spend, but you got a whole bunch of time on your hands, well, I'm going to go door knocking. Okay. Or if I have no time on my hands, but I've got some money to put into budgeting, well, maybe I'm going to hire a cold caller or text message marketing, or I'm going to do direct mail marketing. So I'm looking at time, money, I'm looking at my personal and financial goals, and I'm going to put together a plan where I say, okay, for the next 6 months, this is all I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on probate properties through direct mail marketing for the next 6 months, because I know probate properties are going to probably need work and are going to be good fix and flip opportunities. And those fix and flip opportunities are going to get me to my goal the quickest. So it's just working. I'm always starting with the end in mind. And then everyone always starts with the beginning. Who should I be marketing to? What kind of deal structuring should I be doing? No. Work your way back. Start with the end in mind. What is my goal? And then I'm going to work all the way up to the front, which is, okay, now who am I marketing to? Always be very, very intentional with what you're doing, and you'll be successful.
I love it. I love it so much. That's good. I love the way that you think. You definitely think outside the box, and I appreciate you spending like the last 20 minutes with me, hanging out and kind of just sharing some of your secrets and stuff.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
How can, if anybody wants to get in hold with you, can they find you on Facebook, or where are you at?
Yeah, so you can find me on my Facebook, on Instagram, just using my name, Kari Lyke. We also have a podcast called The Investor Warrior. So you can go onto Apple Podcasts and find The Investor Warrior on there. Or you can email me at Kari, spelled Kari, at theinvestorwarrior.com.